All right, welcome back to another episode of the School of Why podcast. I'm joined here with Sterling Hawkins, who is a total badass. Just got to meet him in person this week in Detroit. Totally unexpected. So welcome to the show, Sterling.
Thanks, Frankie. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, your kind of slogan's kind of the no matter what thing. And I noticed you were getting the crowd to kind of chant that. You're not going to make me chant that, are you?
Not till the end, at least. We can
Not
get
till the
into
end.
some content
No
first.
matter what. Yeah. Let's get inspired first. So, yeah. So,
Yeah,
I I forget. We must have met through the Impact 11 network or something.
must have been. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I love talking with people that are really out there trying to push the envelope, learn more about, who they are. That everybody's got a story, right? So give us a little bit about your story. I know I learned a little bit this week that I didn't know, just about your tech background, kind of your failures and all that, and how that ended up creating your. At least you got a great talk. I don't know how you're. I don't know how much you enjoyed it, but you've got a great talk, so that's good. So tell us
It,
about what led you to that.
it was rough, man. I mean, it's I wouldn't wish discomfort on anybody. I mean, my new book's called Hunting Discomfort. So most often people come up to me and they're like, Sterling, look at my bank account, my business, my relationships. Like, I don't need any more discomfort. I'm surrounded with it.
I don't need to hunt this.
Right. And my answer is always the same, which is you're not hunting with discomfort. You're living with it and probably rationalizing and reasoning why you have it in any area of life. And that's really where I started. I mean, I started a tech company with my dad back in, gosh, I think it was 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
And we sold it to a group in Silicon Valley where it became part of this huge conglomerate that was like the Apple Pay before Apple Pay. And it was an incredible experience. I mean, I've worked with some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. I mean, the guy that ran technology was like an ex-brain surgeon that got into neural networks and AI and all these things. Incredible. And we were really successful starting out because the technology was amazing.
Was this so this was the pay deal, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So
It
you
was
ended up, you
just like
were able
Apple
to sell
Pay.
it?
So we sold it to retailers. What it was is like a
Okay,
little
you're not,
fingerprint
you're
sensor.
saying that you sold it to customers, not to,
That's right.
Facebook or something.
Well, we sold my company to this group, and
Okay.
then I became part of this thing.
Okay, gotcha.
And it
And did
was
you
just like
kept
Apple
like
Pay,
but you
but
kept a
in the
stake in it,
retail
right?
store.
Did you keep a stake?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, huge stake.
but
There was a little cash involved,
but
but
it was
most of it
mostly
was
needed to
equity
sell.
play.
Okay, so you needed this thing to win.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
And not just sell, like we raised $550 million as part
Wow.
of this thing. So selling really wasn't an option. It had to go public to pay back,
Wow. Okay.
at least in any meaningful way. And, it's like living a scene out of Wolf of Wall Street where there's models in the office, parties at the Four Seasons,
Yes.
700 people,
My
offices all over the
favorite kind.
world. Like,
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love that.
it was a blast.
Yeah, see, I was in the
Until
mortgage business back before it like crashed. So I had like
Yeah.
more like a southern version of that. It wasn't probably as cool as Silicon Valley at the time, but same concept.
Yeah, I mean, you're riding high, and at the time, I don't know how it was for you, but at the time, I've got like these plans where I'm going to retire, buy an island, crown myself the next Steve Jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I've got this vision.
Yeah, you've got it all, and it's all on your vision board too, right? Because you've already watched The Secret. You've got
Exactly.
this thing nailed down. Is to just attract all this, and we're just going to put the universe on notice. You know what I'm saying? You're going to manifest like a mofo, as Scott Bloom would say. Okay, so let me ask you this. Okay, while you're telling me this, how old were you when all this was going on?
We sold my company when I was 22.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because the climax of thinking that you're untouchable and that you're going to take over the world is at 24 and a half, in my experience.
Oh, yeah.
For me,
So I was right in that sweet spot.
Actually, 26 and a half was my moment. But like right in there, 24, 25, 26, that's when you still believe like maybe you could be the next American Idol. You haven't really got the grips of like, you're looking around, you're like, why isn't everybody a billionaire? This is so easy.
Right.
This is ridiculous. Everybody should be a
billionaire. I've got business figured out. This will be one of like 10 unicorns I'm part of.
What is wrong with these other people? It's so easy. I mean, it's right there. Yeah, dude, you're telling my story. Okay, so here you are, the Silicon Valley, Wolf of Payment Wall Streets, and you got to go public. What happens? What goes wrong? Because I already know that it goes wrong because I saw your slide that just had all these headlines of you going bankrupt.
Yeah. Yeah, it went south, and it didn't like go south a little bit. It was like all of a sudden one day, the promise of new investment that we had coming in
Yeah.
fell apart. The CEO of this company had control of the board, refused to give up control of it, which was one of the stipulations of another, I think it was 200 million coming in. And that very quickly
So
led to
that
the
one
downfall.
decision was a huge part of it. That guy not being
Y-
willing to like get on board.
Yeah, you could pin it on that, but in retrospect, there were a lot of
Yeah,
things,
of course.
right? And
Were you guys
the
too early?
I don't think it was too early. I think we grew too fast from
Mhm.
company infrastructure standpoint for the organic growth to keep up with
Yeah,
it.
half a
But
billion dollars will do that to you, right? I mean, the fact is like you
right,
didn't get to go through the stages where you're like starving and eating ramen and trying to do all that stuff that kind of gives you that grit, that character. You just kind of it was all
right,
there. Yeah, that's tough. I can't
right.
imagine. I would have totally effed that up if I
Well,
had done it the
and there
right
were
way.
all these big hitters, like the number 5 guy at IBM, the former CMO of Dunkin' Donuts. Like all of these people came in as executives with like little old me, and I'm sitting around the conference table
Right,
with these guys
right,
talking like I know anything.
right.
Right? It's
You're what
just
I
I
call
look
the
at
millennial
myself back
man.
then.
Yeah, when you're just like a kid that has all this information but doesn't have experience, I call that the millennial man.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm embarrassed about it in
Now I gotta
retrospect
call it
because
the Z man.
I
That's the Z man, right? Gen Z is the Z man.
yeah, yeah, and I think there were a lot of things that we were avoiding. Avoiding really tough conversations when we probably should have had them. We were candidly buying some customers, not really selling them, so they weren't really bought in at a core level. And we were growing so quickly, we stopped vetting people not just for expertise but for culture,
Mhm.
just because we needed warm bodies. And so that all kind of climaxed in that one moment, and the entire thing started to fall apart, corresponding with the housing market collapse. So it was a bad market time in general.
So we must be
And
almost the same age. What year were you born in?
82. You?
Okay, yeah, 81. So there you go. So we
There you
we
go.
kinda went
Yeah.
down
A
together
year
with the
apart.
mortgage crisis. There you go, man. Tough times, and all that was obviously predetermined by the government, but this isn't really a political show, so whatever. But
Right.
we had
We'll
fun.
save that for a
Yeah,
follow
yeah,
on
we had fun, and
podcast,
that's fine, and
perhaps.
we learned from it, right? So, all right, so what'd you
Yeah.
learn from it? I mean, how long did it take you to get back on your feet?
Well, the problem was I didn't learn from it fast enough. I
Mm,
kept up this facade of
yikes.
success where
Mhm.
like I just wasn't willing to go through the discomfort of telling my friends I didn't have any income anymore. So, for a while I
Oh,
kept
you
going to
tried to
these
keep it
expensive
rolling?
dinners with millionaires, and after a while, I can't afford rent anymore.
Oof,
Um,
classic.
I've got bills piling up. Like I needed a job, but I was just too like shame stricken to tell anybody or to apply. Like
Damn.
I was paralyzed by it.
Oh, man. And that was all in San Francisco, you said?
In San Francisco, yeah.
Yeah, sheesh. Interesting.
Um,
So you
so
that made
to
it
answer
that
your
added
question,
insult to injury.
right, and to answer your question, it took years, like years where I kind of scrapped myself together, tried to keep this facade up until I totally collapsed and end up at my parents' house with no money. Girlfriend breaks up with me,
Classic.
no job, like
And
literally
okay, so what how
nothing
old are
going
you
for
at
me.
this point? How old are you at that point?
I just turned 40. Oh,
No, when you
back
went to
back
when
then.
yeah, when your girlfriend
So
broke up with you, you
I'm
had to go
I'm
back to mom and
early
dad's.
early 30s, like 31, 32, somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah, okay. That was a big see,
Yeah,
for me, it
and
happened a little different.
having
Yeah, go ahead.
I I was gonna say having to move in to your parents' house in your early 30s just isn't a good look.
No, it's bad. I did it when
Yeah,
I was 27, but it didn't last real long, but I ended up,
yeah,
like, getting sober, going to rehab from, like, drugs and alcohol,
yeah,
so that actually helped me kinda get there a little faster, because like,
yeah,
that'll wake you up in the morning, and so that was a
yeah,
wake-up call that I couldn't really hide, and so it was
mhm,
just like, "Okay, this" and that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, and it sounds like your
yeah,
bottom kind of was being a grown ass man going back to your parents' house, among other things, broken
yeah,
down.
and same as you, I look at it and I'm like, awful. The worst,
Yeah.
darkest times I've ever had in my life where I don't know how it was for you in that time,
Oh
but
my
I'm
god,
thinking
it
like,
was ridiculous. I
do
wouldn't wish it
do
on
I
my
wanna
worst
go
enemy.
on?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, what's the point of even living? Like, should I off myself? No, trust me, all that is
Yeah,
part of it, and
yeah,
it's crazy because it's so ridiculous how much at the time we put into believing that like this is reality. Like
Right.
the failure we were having has anything to do with true reality anyway. It's
Exactly.
crazy.
But it doesn't occur like that, right? It
No,
wasn't like,
hell
"Oh,
no.
I feel like I'm a
Right.
failure
Yeah,
right now." Like,
you weren't
I
just like, "You
was
know
a
what? Steve
failure.
Jobs said that any failure is an opportunity. So this is a good thing. I'm
Yeah.
gonna step into this." Yeah, like as if that's what it is. Or you listen
Right.
to some bullshit podcast with two guys talking about hunting discomfort, and then all of a sudden you were like, "Oh, that's how you do it." So if you're listening now and your life is shit, like just so you know, you got another 10 years to go.
Yeah. Well, and I think I
Just
could have
kidding.
probably
Nine and a
cut
half.
that decade far shorter
Right?
had I been willing to go into those darker parts of myself, that fear, the
Yep.
shame, the embarrassment, the anger, the grief. I can't tell you the depths of the grief I had about
Wow.
it, connected to all sorts of other things in my life. But until I
Mhm.
started to go into those things, it was paralyzing for me. And I was going to say, I look at it now as one of the greatest things to ever happen to me in my life
100%.
because take a page out of your book. I found my why, or at least that was
Yeah,
the beginning of finding
that's right.
why I'm here.
Yeah, that's where it starts, and then but from
Yeah.
there, what I learned and once you read more than one page of the book, you realize it's actually there's plenty of books about finding your why. As I was actually talking to
Yeah.
Greg Scheinin about this, he's like,
Yeah.
I know, you talk a lot about the why and finding your why, but I'm all about the what. And I'm like, well, yeah, so am I. I mean, the book's actually about how to make your why a reality. Figuring out what your why
Yeah.
is like, okay, we can do that in one night. Making that a reality,
Yeah.
mastering it, making that an everyday part of your life, that's a whole nother story. So, and that's really where the rubber meets the road. And you have to have lived it. You have to experience it to be able to even talk about it, right? So you had to have the last 10
Totally.
years to be able to talk about it.
Exactly. And I would say, just to kind of build on what you're saying, is you need the how, but I think you also need to be willing to get the discomfort out of the way that's in the way of you realizing that
Well,
why.
because that's the
And
motivation. Nobody does this. So first of all, it's work. It's hard
yeah.
work and it's an inside job. And nobody wants to do the work. Like, I mean, I was I still am sober 14 years later. I've done a lot of work with 12
Yeah.
step organizations and things like that. And it's an everyday process for me. And the fact is it
Yeah.
is work. The stuff that actually gets me freedom, gets me happiness, peace, whatever it is internally I need to be able to be what I step into what I want to
Yep.
be or need to be or whatever. All that is work. And the thing is, you're not going to, you
Yeah.
won't do that work unless you're desperate. You have to get desperate to have motivation to even do the work we're talking about. Otherwise, people will just be like, "Well, this is too much work. This is too hard. It's uncomfortable, emotionally, physically, everything else." And so that's really what it
Yeah.
boils down to: is that you have to hit a bottom to get desperate enough to do this. Otherwise, you can just never hit a bottom, but you always are going to live in the middle. So if you're on this
Right.
podcast, you're talking to you, you're going to your talks, going to my talks, and you want more, right? But you may not want to
Right.
hear what we have to say. You really might not.
Right. And I think once you see that, life kind of forces you into that box where you hit rock bottom. Now you've got the tools, or really what, no matter what is a system to build the box yourself so you don't have to hit rock bottom. I'd like to think about it. It's either discomfort by default
Yes.
or discomfort by design. Like,
Well,
you
and
don't get an option whether or not you want to feel
that's
it.
right. Well, the thing is, so here's the deal: the bottom doesn't
Yeah.
have to be your company. Right? It doesn't have
Right.
to
Right.
be
Right.
your marriage. It can be. For me, it was both. It doesn't have to be getting
Yep.
sober. It was that too. I've gone through all of those. I mean, I've been through so many of them,
Yep.
but I've learned along the way how to like raise the bottom. So you basically keep
Exactly.
raising the bottom to where it's not. You don't have. It doesn't have to be so extreme because you're learning from
Yeah.
it and things like that. And that's the beauty of going through this process is that some people that can take direction without going to
Yeah.
bottom, you definitely don't have to. You don't have to. If you're inspired enough and don't want to, then yeah. But it's better to expect it and as you say, hunt it or lean into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually what's interesting about your thing. And I didn't get to hear your whole talk, and I have not obviously read your
Yeah.
book. When's your book come out?
It's already out.
It's
It's been
already
out
out.
for a month.
Oh, there you go. See, I should have known that. And your publishers Amplify?
No, Wonderwell Publishing out of
Wonderwell.
LA.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. I just figured
Yeah.
because you were on that group text with Nair and that you were
No,
on the deal. You're
Nairn's
just
a good
friends?
friend of
Yeah,
mine.
that's cool.
But before I met him, I was doing some things with Wonderwell. So this, a book's in the works for a long time before it actually comes
Oh,
out.
you're
So
telling me I started in
yeah.
2012 and put out my first book in 2016, and then I started
Yeah.
breaking Y in 2020 and was able to narrow that down to 2 years, and it was 2022
Yeah.
in February it came out, but, you
Yeah.
you gotta just kinda
Same with
narrow it
me.
down. Yeah.
Similar.
My next one, I actually from this last talk about inauthentic existence, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be
Yeah.
my next book because the amount of work I've kinda put into that, it just it's the natural evolution of it. But, the
Yeah.
biggest thing that I've learned from all of this stuff is that, when you lean into it, the discomfort, it's actually more comfortable. It's actually,
Yeah.
you actually end up with the easier, softer way, as we say.
Yeah.
Even though it seems like it's the harder way, it's actually easier,
Yep.
because you can avoid so many things that you just can't see yet, but that are coming.
Yeah. I mean, you described hunting discomfort. I mean, it's getting out of the way, what's in the way of you using the tools, the knowledge, the resources that you already have. And I found this great research at the University of Michigan, and they were studying discomfort of all things, right?
Mhm.
And they were scanning people's brains and their bodies as they were going through discomfort. All kinds, physical, mental, emotional. Physical, like you stub a toe; emotional, like you're scared to speak in public, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they found that no matter what kind of discomfort you experience, the body and brain process it almost identically. So much so, by the way, you can take acetaminophen like Advil for emotional pain. I'm not a doctor. I don't suggest you do that. But what we can do is take that next step and say,
Yeah.
okay, if where we meet discomfort is the same anywhere, we can grow our capacity to deal with it everywhere. It's a muscle we build. You go to the gym to build your biceps.
Yeah.
If you want to build your courage, your resilience, your breakthrough results, you hunt discomfort. There's just no other way.
Yeah. Interesting. And I think it's interesting you said that because I have actually noticed that. Like sometimes when I've had a physical pain like in my chest, and
Yeah.
I traditionally just assume it's like stress or something like that. And I have
Yeah.
taken Advil for that before, and it goes away. And it's kind of
Mm,
weird because it's a pain that I just assumed was physical. Now I'm not
yeah.
sure. I don't even know if it was or not, but it's weird because I normally would take it for like a headache, not so much like
Yeah.
something that feels like stress. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so if Advil, if you're listening, either one of us would be great for promoting your product. That's fine if you
Right.
want to do like a paid
Sponsored
partnership.
by Advil.
Yeah, yeah. Just so you know, Advil has not gone on board yet, but if you know someone in Advil, hit me up. So, but
Right.
anyway, well, that's awesome, man. So, what would you say for you? All right, so are you full time now in like thought leadership, keynote, and that, or do you still do some
Yeah.
other businesses?
Have been for a couple of
That's
years.
awesome.
And it's not just keynotes. We're doing workshops behind the scenes with
Coaching.
companies as with individuals. No, I wouldn't say coaching per se,
Okay.
but really working with companies to shift their culture from like a default doesn't matter culture to an intentional, inspiring, no matter what culture.
Nice.
And that's what we're doing with companies
That's
and
great. So it's more like
the company's
workshops, group
leadership.
settings, because when you say no coaching,
Yeah.
obviously it's like coaching, but it's not what you think of coaching as one-on-one.
Right.
Yeah,
Like it's not somebody
yeah. And
calls me
I
up and says, Sterling, I need help with this. It's more
exactly.
like my company's dealing with
That's
that.
awesome. And then so you're doing
Yeah.
a lot of workshops and then trying to do probably more of like the big stage keynotes, i.e. like the filming and
Exactly.
whatnot. Cool. That's great. Yeah, I
Exactly.
could
Yeah.
tell like there were a couple people, you and a couple of other speakers this week in Detroit that felt like, they were obviously already in the game, but just
Yeah.
wanted some new footage or wanted some fresh footage, which is awesome. So
Yeah.
well, that's great,
Yeah.
man.
That's exactly where I'm at. And by the way, I don't know if I said this on the stage or you saw this somewhere about me, but speaking in public used to be the thing that scared me more than anything.
Is that
It
right?
was the scariest thing in the world to me. Yeah.
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 I'm one of the many that would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. I always love that Seinfeld line.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because that's I think that's true for many people. I think that might be the number one fear of people is like
Yeah.
speaking in public, which is crazy. And
I
it's
think it
something
is.
that we all have that. I don't care if you're outspoken or an introvert or an extrovert, not an outrovert.
Yeah.
Either way, it doesn't matter.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, well, when I found out that some of the greatest keynote speakers are introverts, I was like, "Wait, what?" Because I think everybody just
Yeah.
assumes, "Oh, you're loud, you like to talk to people, you like to meet people. That means you're a great speaker, or that means you make sense for doing that." It's like, nope, not the case. And it's cool because
Yeah.
once what we've learned is that there's certain things that as an introvert we maybe have to step into to be a speaker, but as an extrovert, there's things we need to step down from to be a great speaker.
Yeah.
You know what
I
I'm
think the
saying?
best speakers are pretty um introspective. Like they think a
Yeah.
lot about themselves, how they interact with the world. Like anybody can pull a bunch of information from a book, but the best speakers are ones that have really embodied that information
Yes.
and use it
And
and
I think
change
that's
themselves
important.
and those
I'm so
around
glad
them.
you brought that up because I have days where I'm like, "Man, I wonder if I should be doing different content." I wonder if I mean,
Yeah.
if I could crush it more if I was just talking about tech or I was talking about things that
Yeah.
are true to me, but, like, they're not it's not at the same level. And I think that
Right.
the idea is that, like, I have to lean into whatever is my deepest option and my deepest purpose. Um,
100%.
Otherwise, it's not we're not gonna get it across because ultimately, I'm assuming you do it for a similar reason I do it, and that's actually to
Mhm.
help people. Like, that
Yeah.
connection of helping people, like, we could get paid doing a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
But we're choosing to do this stuff because we our highest passion we're now using as a purpose, which is to connect with people and help others. And I
Right.
think that's the same for all of us, you know?
I think so, and I've distilled mine down into like what's most important to me is that people live courageously. Why?
Mhm.
Because I spent so many years not,
Yeah,
and I know the tremendous amount of pain and suffering that went with that. So if I can say a couple of things on a stage or in a workshop that shifts somebody even just 1%, they're going to end up in a totally different and way better trajectory a year, not to mention 10 years
exactly.
down the line. And that's what it's about.
Well, and it's ironic because, like, one of my pillars, like, the 4th pillar in authentic existence is don't flinch, right? And the whole thing is about
Yeah.
leaning into courage even when you have fear. You're gonna have fear,
Yeah.
you're gonna have discomfort, lean into it, don't flinch. So that's kinda
Yeah.
my hashtag is don't flinch, which I think is kinda similar to
Love
your
it. We gotta
hashtag.
get that up behind you somewhere.
Yeah, so we'll put it in post-production, but, the biggest thing that I found in this whole process that's been wild for me, and I've had to actually
Yeah,
lean into this because it's been one of my discomforts, truth be told,
yeah,
is the fact that I'll talk with someone like yourself. We never met till 2 days ago, and
yeah,
you clearly we didn't coordinate our content by any means, and yet there we
yeah,
are, like, saying very similar truths. And there's 2
yeah,
ways to look at this. You can look at it as like, "Oh, everybody's already saying it, so I'm just gonna not worry about it," or you can look at it as that's a confirmation that it is in fact truth. Because the fact is that
yeah,
those consistencies that go throughout humanity, those consistencies that go throughout history, those consistencies
yeah,
that are there every time you talk to someone who's been through it and has been successful, like the fact that we could all tell each other's talk, like you got to look at
right.
that. You got to look at that and not look at it as a negative thing, but like actually a positive reinforcement of that this is actually what needs to happen. And
Yeah,
what it really boils down to is this: the information we're giving is completely irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. It's only relevant when I do the work to create my own experience in it that it becomes real.
yeah,
And so, like, if I don't,
yeah,
the thing is, all the information until you do it is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. What we believe, what we think,
right.
everybody, I don't know if I agree with this think to grow rich thing. I think you got to
Yeah,
do some things to grow rich, right? You got to have a good perspective
yeah,
and all that. But like, if I just think to grow rich and I don't do anything, if I just believe a certain way, but I don't do anything, if I just, feel a certain way and don't do anything, it
yeah,
all comes down to action. And it's not easy, but that's the secret.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think they had these most everything we're talking about today from a leadership, innovation, growth perspective, it was sorted out in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
And and we being humanity still haven't learned. I found
Yes.
this Norwegian study that I thought was really cool, which was I'll put it in my words, which
Okay.
is discomfort stops you from acting in accordance with the knowledge that you already had. They were actually doing a health study, and pretty much everybody can tell you the basics of how you get healthy, some combination of moving more and eating less. Even though these people knew this, it was the discomfort of confronting things about their past, their current situation, their bank account, their business, their relationship, whatever it may have been, that left them unable to act with the things that they knew they
Nice.
needed to do. And so when that's why I'm so like obsessed with this discomfort idea, because when you get into that, you start building your discomfort muscle. You're free, not free based on circumstances, not free because now you've made $1 million or you live in the house you want or you married your dream spouse. You're free based on only yourself. And that's the only true kind of freedom there is.
Yeah. It's basically an inside job. It's amazing
Yeah.
to me. So you're saying this was a study that was done like thousands of years ago by Greeks and they're
No, no,
right
no,
there?
no, no. This is a more recent study. I'm saying they had this stuff figured out in ancient
Oh, in
Greece
general, you're saying it was
in
figured out in Greece.
general,
Okay,
right?
gotcha. Yeah, but and that's the
Yeah,
thing is that like I like that you were able to pull that together. That's great that the discomfort actually stops you from using the knowledge, basically. Yeah,
right,
that completely checks out, and when we can lean into that, and a lot of times we don't until we're forced to. And so this is about
right. And I
what would happen if I wasn't forced to, or if you're in a spot right now and you are feeling forced or desperate, what's the okay, great. I'm willing. I'm ready.
Yeah.
What do I do? And so, all right, and I think that for us, it's about like being able to be there for that moment, because not everybody
Yeah.
in the audience or listening to this podcast is in this spot. Maybe they used to be in the spot, and this is just an encouragement. Maybe they're about
Right.
to be in the spot, but if they are right for that percentage, that is, I think that's what it's about. It's about whether
Mm.
they're seeing me talk, or they're seeing you talk, or seeing somebody else talk, or whatever's
Yeah.
inspiring them. They watch something. There's so many things that kind of lead into that moment, and there's what I like about the guys that I've met in this new business of speaking and things like that
Yeah.
is that they kept reinforcing something that I was like thinking I was worried about, right? And that's that, like,
Mm.
do they really need another guy talking about this stuff? Do we really need another book like this? You know?
Right.
And the
Yeah.
fact is that, like, yes, because there's 7 billion people, and like there's plenty of opportunity to connect with whoever I'm meant to connect with, and like that's good. And worst case scenario, what happens? You connect with some people that already know.
Right. Well, and I think there's a lot of depth and nuance to what you're talking about that is worth exploring with, different people like this
Mhm.
conversation, folks you're working with, maybe people that have an entirely different line of thinking, like to get into some deep um, and maybe even conflicted conversation about that, I think can be the most fun thing, especially if nobody takes offense, right?
Of
Because
course.
you know things in a different way than I know things. And it's in that conversation that might be a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to uncover a deeper truth. Maybe not like the truth,
Right.
but a better truth than either one of us has as
I
an
like that.
individual.
Yeah, because I think the value that everyone brings to the table, no matter who they are, is that it's their own individual experience
Right.
as a human. That
Right.
everyone's human experience is what makes it unique, no matter if they're doing the exact same action, no matter if they think the same thoughts and feel the same ways, they're not really the same. And it's a different experience for each of us. And to be able to like appreciate that person's individual experiences as opposed to just trying to be someone who changes people's experience
Yeah.
to match theirs, that's a
Yeah.
big deal. That it took me a long
Yeah.
time to learn. But first, for a long time, I thought I've got the answers, I've got all this experience, and I need to be able to just get people onto my way of thinking. And
Yeah.
that's not how they're going to have an experience. You know,
No.
it's not. It's only
No.
sharing my experience and then that experience resonating with them and their experiences, possibly, that anything really can get anywhere.
Yeah, totally. And listening to what their experience is, like why do they think that way? Like what perspective do they have on this particular issue, be it discomfort or anything else?
Yeah,
And I think to your earlier point, when you find something that is really deeply important to you, I think about it as like finding something that's written in your heart or in your soul.
yeah,
That is your mission in life, and anything else that's taking you away from that is a distraction. Now, I'm not saying quit your job and sell your house and do whatever's in your heart. I think it's really an excavation to sort out what that is and start taking steps towards living true to it.
I love it. Okay, so before I let you go, I want you to
Yeah.
tell me and the people watching and listening, what would you say is one like life hack that you've used to harness strategic emotions? My whole second
Yeah.
book was about, how to hack and rebuild strategic emotions for authentic success, right? And that's
Yeah.
almost, could be the same subline of your book, right? And so what's
Yeah.
one hack everyday people watching or listening they could take away to really kind of affect their life and maybe their work as well, or both? What's a hack they could use just one thing?
Do one thing every day, no matter what. And it doesn't have to be the same thing. One day it could be a cold bath. The next day it's call your mother. The next day it's, make a cold call. I don't care what it is, but
Okay.
one thing a day. And what you'll do is when you live true to at least doing one thing, that one thing you said you would do every day, you start to build that muscle of giving you the courage, the confidence, the resilience, whatever you want to call it, to get things
Interesting.
done in a non-circumstantial way.
Now, did you say
Um,
one uncomfortable thing? Is it
I
tied to
I don't even
discomfort?
care if it's extra credit if it's uncomfortable, but I'll
Okay.
leave it to the world to make that one thing a day you tell yourself you're going to do. The world will come up with ways to stop
And
you.
when do we tell ourselves? Is it
That'll be the
is
discomfort.
Yeah, so is this something we tell ourselves like the day before, or like maybe in the morning when we wake up? When's a good
The
time to
night
tell ourselves?
before, the morning,
Okay.
but make it and write it down somewhere. So
Right.
at the end of the day, you're calling it a night. You either did it or you
Yeah,
didn't
see,
do
I
it. And
keep
if you
some
didn't do
notes.
it,
Yeah,
like don't harpoon yourself, but just take note. I did it again. I missed my no
yeah.
matter what today. I'm not going to do that tomorrow.
Interesting. Yeah, I use the notes on my phone actually to give me a running 2 weeks schedule, right? And so like and it has little check
Nice.
boxes and I'll check it as I go. And then if I didn't
Yeah.
get it done, I'll put it there. But it's funny, I'm kind of already doing that myself. But I
Cool.
every morning so every week like on Sunday, I get
Yeah.
rid of the last week and create the week that's going to come after this week, right? So I have just like this little system going.
Yep.
But every morning the first thing I do when I wake up, go have a cup of coffee, kind of do some meditation, and then from there I'm looking at that list.
Yeah.
So that's actually interesting. I didn't even think of it as the muscle. I do like the uncomfortable thing though, because the truth is there's
Yeah.
whatever's on that list usually is something that's uncomfortable because the
Probably.
stuff that I'm comfortable with, I'm automatically doing. You know,
Yeah, I like to think about it. Your results aren't determined by how much money you have, how hard you work, who you know. It's determined by the discomfort that you're avoiding. And when you summon some courage to do something, no matter what, that's what's going to progress you forward. Like anybody can sit there to list or reschedule things or respond to like
right.
no nonsense emails. It takes, to your earlier point, really taking some actions in the direction that probably feels a little uncomfortable
Right,
for
and
you
that's not
to get any
automatic.
breakthrough
Yeah, yeah,
results.
anybody
Not
coming not
automatic.
all the stuff coming at me that I'm reacting to that's, like, part of my everyday living, my job, my
Right.
spouse, all my kids, not that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's the stuff that, like, goes beyond that you're working towards that will not happen unless you make it
Right.
happen, right? It will not
Right.
happen unless you're inspired to do something greater than what you're already doing, and it's not
Yeah.
easy.
No. And I would almost say it's the automatic to avoid the discomfort. I don't know how it is for you, but I get up in the morning and sometimes I hit the snooze button like I'm avoiding the discomfort of getting out of bed. And then I have
Mhm.
a coffee to avoid the discomfort of being tired. And then I look at the stairs in my building and then I promptly take the elevator.
Yeah.
Your default almost always will be
Yes.
to avoid discomfort.
The
So it
easier,
really
softer
takes
way.
stepping back daily,
Mhm.
moment by moment to say, am I choosing the easy path that gave me the results that I already have? Or am I taking a step towards something new here, as uncomfortable as it might be?
Love it. Hunting discomfort no matter what. All right, so
That's
there
right.
it is
I'll
right
have to
there.
send you a
Yeah,
copy.
please do. And if you send me, I don't think I've sent you a book, so send me your address and I'll send you one. But awesome
Awesome.
having you on the show. So I'm guessing you're on everything, but mostly TikTok, right? Is TikTok your big jam?
Huge TikTok.
Big tick.
You know what? In the next 2 weeks, I'm going to have my first TikTok
Okay,
video. How's
I
that
want
for a
to
no
see
matter
that. Yeah,
what?
get me a little TikTok. That'll
Yeah,
be your discomfort. Get a
that's
TikTok, but
right.
obviously in the meantime, you're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all that fun stuff. Online, YouTube, right?
That's
Did
right.
you
Yeah.
buy
And
your
best
name? Do you
place
have
to
your
find,
name for your website? Is it
of
sterlinghawkins.com?
course.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you say, of
Yeah.
course,
That's the
somebody
best
took
place
my
to find
name.
all my
I have
stuff.
Frankie Dash Russo. You know what I'm saying? I'm actually
Ah,
trying to
somebody else has
negotiate with the
yeah.
terrorists to buy my own name, but congratulations on getting your own name without having it be a big
Thank you.
deal. So anyway,
Thank you.
sterlinghawkins.com. That's where I can, find it all, right? And get plugged into it all. And do you have a
That's right.
podcast yet? Are you doing that whole deal or not quite yet?
I don't. I did a quick like limited run podcast during the pandemic where I
Okay,
talked to people climbing Everest and Top Gun pilots and all that stuff, but
nice.
not at the moment.
Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna keep an eye out for you, but man, thanks so much for having me on the show. And this is gonna
Yeah.
be great for everybody to get to continue to watch and learn from.
Thanks for having me on, brother. Good to see you.
You too, buddy. Talk to you soon.